The first day of the program was supposed to feel exciting. For most students, it did. They arrived with packed bags, nervous smiles, and big dreams. This outdoor leadership program had a strong reputation, promised discipline, teamwork, and confidence. Many believed it could open doors to future careers. The instructors were respected, especially one senior teacher who had been praised for years as strict but fair. Among the group was a quiet black teenage girl. She stood slightly apart from the others, not because she wanted to, but because she was used to watching first before speaking. She listened carefully, noticed details, and followed rules without complaint. She had trained herself to stay calm in new places. Her posture was straight, her eyes alert, and her voice soft when she spoke. From the start, the teacher noticed her, but not in a good way. While he welcomed others with jokes and encouragement, his tone changed when he spoke to her. He questioned her paperwork twice. He asked if she was sure she belonged there. He spoke louder to her than to anyone else, as if she needed extra instruction. Some students felt uncomfortable, but no one said anything. During the first group exercise, everyone was asked to carry equipment across rough ground. The load was meant to be shared. Yet the teacher handed the heaviest pack to her and told her to prove she was strong enough. She nodded and lifted it without arguing. Her steps were steady, even when her arms began to ache. A few students offered to help, but the teacher waved them away. He watched her closely, waiting for a mistake. When she adjusted the straps, he mocked her, saying she was slowing the group down. When she kept pace, he said she was showing off. No matter what she did, it was wrong in his eyes. Still, she did not react. She had learned long ago that reacting often made things worse. At lunch, the group sat together, laughing and talking. She sat at the edge of the bench, eating quietly. A student nearby asked why the teacher seemed so hard on her. She shrugged and said it was fine. She said she came to learn, not to complain. Her calm answer surprised them. The afternoon training focused on trust and teamwork. Pairs were formed to guide each other through blindfolded paths. When it came time to choose partners, the teacher assigned her last. He paired her with someone much smaller and less experienced, then warned the group to watch closely because mistakes could be dangerous. His words made it feel like a spotlight was placed on her alone. She took a slow breath and guided her partner carefully. Her voice stayed steady. She described each step clearly, warned of every turn, and kept her partner safe the entire time. When the blindfold came off, the partner smiled with relief and thanked her. The group clapped lightly, impressed. The teacher did not clap. He narrowed his eyes and said it was beginner's luck. He told her not to get comfortable. His words felt sharp, but she kept her face calm. As the day went on, small moments added up. He corrected her even when she was right. He questioned her answers during lessons but accepted the same answers from others. He warned her about rules she already followed. By evening, it was clear to many that this was not about discipline. It was personal. That night, the students gathered around a fire. Stories were shared, laughter echoed, and the mood softened. When it was her turn to speak, she kept it short. She talked about liking challenges and learning from them. She said pressure showed who people really were. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. Some students nodded, feeling she was speaking from experience. The teacher interrupted, saying this program would break anyone who thought they were special. He looked directly at her when he said it. The fire crackled in the silence that followed. She met his gaze for a brief moment, then looked back at the flames. Later, in her sleeping area, she lay awake while others slept. She replayed the day in her mind. None of the behavior surprised her, but it still hurt. She reminded herself why she was there. She had promised herself she would finish what she started, no matter how uncomfortable it became. The next morning began early. Physical drills tested strength and balance. Once again, the teacher pushed her harder than the rest. He timed her separately, shouted instructions faster, and criticized her form. Still, she completed every task. Sweat covered her face, but her movements stayed controlled. A few instructors from other teams watched quietly. They noticed the pattern. One whispered that the pressure seemed uneven. Another said the girl handled it better than most adults would. The teacher brushed off their concerns and said he was preparing her for real challenges. As the group gathered for a briefing, the teacher announced that the coming days would include advanced exercises. He spoke about courage, fear, and trust. Then he added that not everyone was built for high-pressure situations. Again, his eyes went to her. She stood tall, hands at her sides, listening. Inside, she felt something steady growing. It was not anger. It was focus. She understood that she was being tested in ways that had nothing to do with skill. She also knew she was stronger than he thought. The helicopter training was mentioned briefly. It was described as optional and controlled. Most students exchanged nervous looks. She remained calm. Heights did not scare her the way people assumed. She had faced harder things before. As the briefing ended, the teacher smiled in a way that made several students uneasy. He said the real leaders would reveal themselves soon. The girl felt a chill, not from fear, but from awareness. She sensed that something important was coming. She did not know exactly what the teacher planned, but she knew one thing for sure. She would not let herself be broken. Whatever came next, she would meet it with the same quiet strength she had carried all her life. The second day began before sunrise. A loud whistle cut through the quiet air, pulling everyone from sleep. The students rushed outside, still tired, still sore from the day before. The sky was dark blue, and the air felt cold against their skin. The teacher stood waiting, arms crossed, eyes sharp. He announced that the day would focus on advanced trust exercises. He spoke slowly, choosing his words with care. He said real leaders were calm under pressure. He said fear revealed weakness. Each sentence felt aimed at one person, even though he never said her name. The girl stood in line, shoulders back, breathing evenly. She listened, not reacting. Around her, other students shifted nervously. Some glanced at her, aware she was being singled out again. The first exercise involved climbing a tall training tower. Students were secured with safety lines and guided by instructors. Most were nervous but excited. When it was her turn, the teacher stepped closer than necessary. He checked her harness twice, pulling hard on the straps as if expecting them to fail. He asked if she was afraid of heights. His voice carried a hint of challenge. She answered calmly that she respected heights, but fear did not control her. A few students exchanged looks. The teacher smirked and told her words were easy on the ground. She climbed steadily, placing each foot with care. Halfway up, the teacher shouted instructions faster than before, trying to rush her. She did not rush. She moved with patience, testing each hold. When she reached the top, she paused, looking out across the wide land below. Her face showed no panic, only focus. When she climbed down safely, the group clapped. The teacher stopped them. He said applause was earned, not given. His voice cut through the moment, turning pride into silence. The next exercise involved a simulated rescue drill. Teams were assigned randomly, but again, she was placed in the most difficult position. She was told to lead a group through uneven terrain while carrying extra equipment. The load was heavy, but she adjusted it quietly and gave clear instructions to her team. One student slipped on loose ground. Without hesitation, she reached out and stabilized them, preventing a fall. The moment was quick, but several people saw it. The rescued student thanked her, breathing hard. She nodded and continued moving. The teacher frowned. He pointed out a minor delay and called it a failure in leadership. Others protested softly, saying she had helped someone. He ignored them. By midday, tension had settled over the group. Lunch was quiet. Conversations were short. The girl ate slowly, conserving energy. She noticed a few instructors watching the teacher more closely now. Their expressions showed concern. After lunch, the teacher gathered everyone for a briefing near the landing zone. A helicopter rested nearby, its blades still. The sight alone made some students uneasy. The teacher explained that this training was about trust in equipment and instruction. He said everything would be controlled and safe. He asked for volunteers. No one stepped forward. He smiled thinly and said leaders did not wait for comfort. His eyes moved directly to the girl. He said she had shown confidence earlier and should go first. A murmur spread through the group. One student quietly asked if the exercise was required. The teacher replied that participation showed commitment. He added that fear had no place in leadership. The girl felt the attention shift fully onto her. She took a breath. She knew the rules of pressure well. She also knew when pressure crossed into something else. Still, she did not refuse. She said calmly that she would follow proper safety steps. The teacher nodded, but his expression held impatience. He motioned her closer to the helicopter. As she walked, the sound of the blades starting filled the air. Wind pushed against her clothes. Dust rose from the ground. Inside, the space was loud and tight. She sat where directed, eyes scanning the equipment automatically. Her movements showed familiarity, which surprised one of the crew members. They watched her adjust her position with practiced ease. The helicopter lifted off. The ground dropped away. Some students shielded their eyes, watching from below. Inside, the teacher raised his voice over the noise. He explained the next step, but his words were rushed, unclear. She asked one simple question to confirm instructions. He snapped that hesitation showed doubt. He told her to trust him. Her heartbeat stayed steady, but her instincts sharpened. She felt that something was wrong, not with the equipment but with the intent behind the exercise. The helicopter hovered at a controlled height. The teacher leaned closer, pointing toward the open area below. He said this was the moment leaders proved themselves. He said she needed to act first so others would follow. She looked down briefly, then back at him. Her face showed no fear, only awareness. She adjusted her stance slightly, grounding herself. The wind roared around them. From the ground, students watched, confused. This part of the exercise had not been explained to them. A few instructors stepped closer, signaling to each other. Inside the helicopter, the teacher's patience thinned. He repeated his command louder. His words carried pressure, not guidance. He said she was wasting time. He said everyone was watching. She felt the weight of that moment. She understood this was no longer about training. It was about control. Still, she remained calm. She knew rushing would be dangerous. She trusted preparation, not intimidation. The helicopter continued to hover. The tension grew thicker with each second. On the ground, whispers turned into concern. One instructor raised a hand, signaling for a pause, but the noise drowned it out. The girl steadied her breathing. She made one final equipment check, her fingers moving with confidence. Whatever happened next, she would rely on skill, not the teacher's approval. As the helicopter shifted slightly in the air, the teacher leaned closer again. His voice was sharp now, edged with frustration. He repeated the words that would echo long after the blades stopped turning. "You jump first." The words hung in the air, loud even over the roar of the blades. The wind pushed hard against her shoulders, but she stayed balanced. She did not move right away. She looked at the teacher, then at the open space below, then back at the equipment. Her mind stayed clear. Panic never entered. She focused on what she could control. She raised her voice just enough to be heard and said she needed a proper count and confirmation. The teacher waved her off. He said leaders acted, not questioned. He leaned closer, crowding her space. The pressure was clear, but so was her resolve. One of the crew members noticed her comm checks and stepped forward, signaling for a pause. The teacher snapped at them to stay back. The helicopter shifted slightly, correcting its position. From the ground, people pointed and whispered. Something about this moment felt wrong to many watching. She planted her feet, feeling the vibration through the floor. She touched the line, the release point, the backup. Her hands moved with confidence, not speed. She had trained for moments like this, though never under this kind of gaze. The teacher raised his voice again, sharp and impatient. He said the exercise was simple. He said hesitation proved fear. He said everyone was waiting on her. She met his eyes. For a second, the noise seemed to fade. She said calmly that courage was not the same as recklessness. Her words were steady, not defiant. That only made him angrier. He stepped closer and made a sudden motion, trying to force the moment forward. It was quick and careless. The crew member shouted. The helicopter jolted slightly as the pilot adjusted. The air rushed louder. She reacted on instinct, not fear. Her body followed training. She moved into position, keeping control of her balance and timing. The moment stretched, then released. From below, it looked like a clean, controlled exit. No chaos, no flailing, just a steady form moving through open air the way it was meant to. The group gasped, then fell silent. As she descended, her focus sharpened. She adjusted her posture, responding to the wind. Every movement was precise. Her breathing stayed slow. This was not a leap of panic. It was a practiced response. The ground rose toward her, fast but expected. She followed the steps she had learned long ago. When she touched down, it was smooth. She bent, absorbed the motion, and stood upright. For a moment, no one moved. Then someone shouted her name from the ground. Applause broke out, loud and uncontrolled. Relief washed over faces that had been tense with fear. A few people laughed, not from humor, but from shock that she was safe. She unclipped calmly and stepped aside, heart steady. She looked up briefly. The helicopter hovered, then slowly moved away. Inside, the teacher's confidence cracked. His face drained of color. He looked from the crew to the instructors on the ground. He began speaking fast, saying everything went according to plan. His voice lacked its earlier strength. The crew member confronted him directly, pointing out the lack of clear command and procedure. Another instructor joined in, saying this was never part of the approved exercise. Students gathered closer, listening. The girl stood quietly, letting others speak. She did not celebrate. She did not boast. When asked if she was hurt, she shook her head and said she was fine. One instructor asked where she learned such control. She answered simply that she had trained before and respected safety. She said preparation mattered more than pressure. The teacher interrupted, trying to regain authority. He said her response proved his method worked. No one agreed. The room felt different now. The power he held moments ago had slipped. A few students spoke up. They said they felt uncomfortable. They said this was not what they signed up for. Their voices shook, but they spoke anyway. The teacher looked around and realized he was no longer in control of the story. People were recording. Questions were being asked. The girl finally spoke again. She said she came to learn leadership, not to be used as an example through fear. Her words were quiet, but they carried weight. She said trust was built, not forced. Silence followed. The helicopter had landed. The blades slowed. The noise faded. What remained was the truth of what everyone had seen. Officials were called to review the situation. The group was dismissed early. Some students walked away shaken. Others gathered around the girl, thanking her, checking on her. She sat for a moment on a low step, letting the air settle. Only then did she feel the weight of what had happened. Not fear, but clarity. She understood that this moment would change everything. As the sun lowered, the teacher stood alone, speaking to administrators. His voice no longer carried authority. The mask he wore had slipped. The girl rose and joined the others. She did not look back. She knew she had done nothing wrong. She had trusted herself, and that trust had carried her safely through. What came next would not be easy, but one thing was clear now. She was no longer alone, and the truth had finally been seen. After the helicopter landed and the noise faded, the place felt strangely still. People moved slowly, as if the ground itself needed time to settle. Training was stopped for the rest of the day. Students were told to remain nearby while the situation was reviewed. No one argued. Everyone knew something serious had happened. The girl stood near the edge of the field, breathing in the cool air. Her body felt steady, but inside she felt tired in a way that sleep could not fix. A few students approached her carefully, asking if she was all right. She nodded and said she was fine. She did not want attention. She only wanted space to think. Soon, an administrator asked her to come for a conversation. The tone was calm and respectful. She followed without hesitation. They walked past areas that once felt tense but now felt quiet, almost empty. Inside a small room, two officials waited. They offered her water and asked her to sit. They explained that they needed to understand exactly what happened. She agreed and began from the beginning. She spoke about the first day, the way she was treated differently, the constant pressure, and the uneven rules. She explained how she tried to stay focused and not react. When she reached the moment in the helicopter, her voice stayed even. She described the lack of clear instruction and how she relied on her own preparation. They listened closely, taking notes. They did not interrupt. When she finished, one of them asked if she felt the situation was safe. She paused, then said no. She said safety requires trust, and trust had been missing. They thanked her for her honesty. One of them said it took strength to stay calm in a moment like that. She answered that calm was sometimes the only protection people had. Outside, word spread quickly. Students talked in small groups, replaying what they saw. Some were angry. Others were confused. Many were relieved that she was safe. The teacher was called into a meeting with senior staff. At first, his voice carried confidence. He said he was challenging students to grow. But as questions became more specific, his answers grew shorter. He struggled to explain why standard procedures were ignored. Other instructors were asked to share what they had observed. A few admitted they noticed unfair treatment before but stayed silent. Saying it out loud was uncomfortable. The truth often is. As hours passed, phones began to buzz. Parents wanted answers. Program leaders realized the situation could not be brushed aside. A decision had to be made. That evening, everyone was gathered together. An official addressed the group and acknowledged that mistakes were made. They said safety and respect came before any lesson. They promised a full investigation and encouraged anyone with concerns to speak openly. The girl stood among the others, listening. She felt something loosen inside her chest. For once, the burden was not hers alone. Later, several students approached her privately. One admitted they had been scared to say anything before. Another said watching her stay calm gave them courage. She told them that fear was normal, but silence could be dangerous. That night, she sat quietly, writing down her thoughts. She did not write out of anger. She wrote to remember. She wanted to hold on to the lesson that dignity mattered, even when authority tried to take it away. The next morning felt different. The teacher did not appear. Another instructor took over and explained the day's plan clearly. They encouraged questions. They reminded everyone that safety came first. Training resumed slowly. The mood was careful but respectful. The girl noticed that instructors now watched closely, not to judge, but to protect. She felt a sense of balance return. Later in the day, an announcement was made. The teacher had been removed from duties, while the investigation continued. A quiet wave of relief passed through the group. The girl did not smile or celebrate. She simply breathed out. Consequences were not about winning. They were about fairness. An instructor later apologized to her for not stepping in sooner. They said her strength forced everyone to look at things differently. She accepted the apology without bitterness. As the sun set, students gathered again, talking more freely than before. Laughter returned, softer but real. The program had been shaken, but it was not broken. The girl sat back, watching the sky change colors. She understood that standing firm had a cost, but it also brought clarity. She did not feel like a hero. She felt like someone who refused to lose herself. Somewhere else, the teacher packed his things quietly. The authority he once held was gone. What remained were questions he could not avoid. The program moved forward, changed by the truth that had come to light. And at the center of it all was a girl who chose steadiness over fear, and honesty over silence. The final days of the program felt different from the beginning. There was still training, still effort, still early mornings, but the air was lighter. People spoke more openly. Instructors explained the reasons behind exercises instead of demanding blind obedience. Trust slowly returned. The girl noticed the change right away. She felt it in the way instructions were given and in the way questions were welcomed. No one rushed her. No one tested her just to see her fail. For the first time since arriving, she felt like she truly belonged there. One afternoon, the group was asked to take part in a reflection session. Everyone sat in a circle. The goal was to talk about lessons learned, not just about skills but about character. First, no one spoke. Then one student shared how fear had almost stopped them from joining the program at all. Another admitted they stayed silent when they should have spoken up. Their voice shook, but they kept going. The room stayed quiet, respectful. When the girl finally spoke, she kept it simple. She said leadership was not about forcing others to prove themselves. She said real strength showed when people protected each other. No one interrupted her. When she finished, several people nodded. Some wiped their eyes. Her words did not sound practiced. They sounded lived. Later that day, an official from outside the program arrived. They spoke with the group and explained that the investigation had found serious failures in judgment and conduct. They said steps were being taken to make sure nothing like this would happen again. Clear rules would be put in place. Oversight would increase. The teacher would not be returning. The announcement was not dramatic. It was calm and firm. That alone said everything. As the days passed, the girl focused on finishing strong. She completed each task with care, helping others when she could. She did not try to stand out, but her presence gave others confidence. When someone hesitated, she encouraged them quietly. During the final challenge, teams were required to plan and execute a complex task together. Communication mattered more than speed. The group chose her as a guide, not because she asked, but because they trusted her judgment. She accepted the role without pride or fear. She listened to ideas, weighed options, and spoke clearly. When problems came up, she adjusted calmly. The team succeeded not perfectly, but safely and together. At the closing ceremony, certificates were handed out. Applause echoed across the field. When her name was called, the clapping was longer, warmer. She walked forward, accepted the certificate, and stepped back without a speech. Afterward, several instructors approached her. They thanked her for her composure and honesty. One said her actions had reminded them why they chose to teach in the first place. She smiled softly and thanked them in return. As the program ended, students packed their bags and exchanged contacts. Hugs were shared. Promises were made to stay in touch. The girl stood for a moment, taking in the place that had tested her in ways she never expected. Before leaving, she returned to the open area where everything had changed. The ground was quiet now. No helicopter, no shouting, just wind and space. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. She knew the experience would stay with her, not as fear but as proof. Proof that calm could stand against pressure. Proof that dignity could expose wrongdoing. Proof that one voice, steady and clear, could shift an entire system. As she walked away, she felt lighter. She did not need applause or validation. She carried something stronger with her: self-trust. Elsewhere, reports were being filed, policies rewritten, and lessons learned the hard way. The program would move forward, changed by what had happened. The girl returned home to her normal life, but she was not the same. She moved with more certainty. She spoke with more confidence. When faced with unfairness, she remembered that silence was a choice, and not always the safest one. The story spread quietly, not as a headline, but as a reminder. A reminder that courage does not always shout. Sometimes it stays calm, checks the facts, and stands firm. And long after the noise faded, what remained was the truth of that moment. When pushed into the unknown, she did not fall. She rose, and in doing so helped others rise too.